I can totally understand that people need to express whatever emotions that they carry within themselves, especially when it's negative. What I don't agree with is how we go about expressing those negative emotions. Express whatever negative emotions that you have, but please do so within the confines of certain parameters. Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel, Graciously Grace. My name is Grace Tsumbu. I just have a lot of things on my mind, really. So many things on my mind. And I just want to use this platform to share my opinions. Please feel free to differ. But for me, from experience, these are the things that really work for me and give me the peace and sanity that I deeply crave. Last month, I read on a friend's page about the story of two friends. One had the resources to go through the university, the other didn't, but sought to go into business, and that business ended up being very successful. This other friend who went to university and graduated got a 9 to 5, and I would say was doing averagely well, but wanted more. It didn't make sense for him to put in so much work and at the end of the month get a paycheck that wasn't worth all the stress. So this friend who is in the corporate world reaches out to this friend of his who is into business and says, you know what, I would like to go into business as well. Could you assist? And he says, of course I can. And long story short, the corporate guy sells everything, if I remember correctly from the story, adds up to his savings and gives his friend, who is a business guy, traveling out of the country to buy products for him so that he can sell. But this business friend of his uses the money to buy more goods for himself without letting his friend know, and insists that his friend comes to serve him for a couple of years and then he return back the money with interest. That relationship ended badly because the corporate friend did everything he could to seek a resolution to this problem. Reached out to the police, reached out to the man's pastor, reached out to people, the traditional rulers in the village, and finally resulted to getting a medicine man involved. The medicine man says to this corporate friend that if he was lying about all that he has said, whatever befell him will be his responsibility. But if his other friend, who is the business guy in quote, was wrong, then he will face the consequences. Now, the consequences were not just losing money, it cost him the loss of his 3 sons and eventually himself. And when all of this was happening, the business friend didn't even think to make peace. And I ask myself, on both parts, how far is too far? Sometimes when we are in so much pain and we've been betrayed and we have been hurt by the ones that are closest to us, by the ones that we do so much for, by the ones that we sacrifice so much for, there is the tendency to really get angry to the extent that you want to get even, you want payback. It's human nature, especially when the one who is hurt feels he or she deserves to get even. Because in that way, the person will end up feeling better. But guess what? You don't feel better when you get even. You hurt more. You are filled with regrets and your peace is taken away. I would subscribe that whenever you get angry or frustrated or bitter or you've been done wrong, try to address the issue the best way you can, weighing the consequences. When you've exhausted all of those measures and still you haven't gotten the result that you seek, I beg you, let it go. Let it go. There is a reason why God says, vengeance is mine. Don't you think God sees into the hearts of everyone and searches deeper than the human mind can search? Whoever does you wrong will get back what they deserve. But please, let it not come from you. I don't subscribe to putting yourself in a position where you're a doormat or you are taken for granted. Nip it in the bud. Set boundaries. Call the person to order. And if you must, please retreat. When people are hurt, it is very unlikely for logic to come in. Your emotions take over. And I'm not one to subscribe to you bottling emotions, because one day when the bottle is full and there is a cork on it, guess what? It's going to explode. And the consequences of that explosion will be regrettable. You don't want that. Both parties went too far. And I'd like to tie this in to the story that is going viral about the Ghanaian pastor who shot his wife. Goodness gracious. I wish I didn't come across that news, because I have been deeply sad, really sad. How can two people who profess to love each other end up like this? And then you are a pastor, you know the Bible, okay? But this brings me to this notion that knowledge is nothing if you don't apply it accordingly. It's not enough to have the title of pastor. It's not enough to say you've read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation 1,000,000 times in a year. What are you doing with the words that resonate with you? How are those words transforming you and changing you? Whatever the issues were, it could have been resolved. And sometimes, even when you get yourself out of immediate harm, it is very important to take yourself away from not just the environment, if possible the country, Do what you must. Cut off, block off, retreat. When you see the signs from the very beginning of any relationship, do not tolerate it. One thing is, we can only try to understand how the human mind works. We do not have superpowers to know exactly word for word what the human mind thinks. At best, we can come close to assuming based on the data we gather from the people who speak, because you can't speak out what's not being in your mind. But then what about the things that have not been spoken of? And sometimes when things are spoken of, like the threat the pastor made to his wife, I will kill you. We take it for granted. We think that these people are just bluffing. No. No. Go through the emotions. Be angry. I don't know the details of what transpired before the unfortunate incident. But what I would say is, and what I do is this: when I'm really upset and angry, I talk about it. I have people that know me, that I am absolutely transparent with, that pick certain things I try to hide, who will be honest with me, so that the advice I get is not prejudiced. Because when you're talking about the issues that hurt you from your angle, you may not be as objective as possible. You need to include everything, but there isn't much time for that. So you try to be as brief as possible, and in that briefness, you're only concentrating on what was done to you that hurt you so much. Find people that you can trust, that know you and can tell you the truth. Scream if you must. Go outside. Sleep it off. Go shopping. Call a loved one. Do acts of service. But please don't expect that there will be an immediate relief, because healing and going through emotions takes time. The time it would take for me to heal from a hurt and a pain is different from the time it would take for you. It is better to not take too far actions that will give birth to consequences and lead to regret. Understand that it's better to let things go. It's painful, right? It's so painful. But trust me, it is better to let things go. I will see you in my next video. Peace and angels.